Hello, kia ora, g'day. I'm Philip Duncan from Weather Watch TV on YouTube with your Australia-only forecast for the next week ahead, recorded on Thursday, June the 26th. Let's have a look at the satellite map and the lightning map. Plenty of thunderstorms up towards Papua New Guinea and Indonesia, where you would expect them. But Australia itself, pretty much thunderstorm free. We've got a few just off the west coast of the central west coast of Western Australia, and then obviously New South Wales coastal areas, most of those moving out to the east. Lord Howe Island might get a few of them as that main southerly comes on in around this low that's spinning in the Tasman. New Zealand at the moment, subtropical winds coming down. Australia, you got the polar southerlies coming on in, at least in that southeastern corner. Let's make a bit of sense about the wind here. So low pressure parked in the Tasman Sea, high pressure coming in to South Australia, and another one coming in to the southwest of Western Australia. Above the low pressure, or should I say north of the low pressure, easterly winds are blowing through. And then towards the eastern side, because of the low and the incoming high, they both work together to dredge up the southerly. And that's why temperatures are down at the moment. You might notice that a little more tonight as the high comes on through, the anticyclone, clearer skies, lighter winds, and it locks in that colder airflow during the night. But as far as rain's concerned, most of that is moving out to the east. For now anyway, because next week does look as though there will be an east coast, well, I'm going to call it an east coast storm, potentially. I don't like using the word storm very much, but it is looking though it might produce gale force winds right around the centre of it. So this is how we look for Friday. Not a lot going on. Easterly winds blowing across the continent. They'll be a little brisk in exposed areas, nothing too problematic in there, but there may be some dust storms around. I've certainly had a few comments from people talking about that in recent weeks, but a big high pressure zone coming into South Australia. A few southern coastal showers, but the pale blue here means it's not going to be very much. It may only be 0.2 millimetres or less than that. So don't expect much in the way of rain. Heavier showers probably over here on the eastern side around parts of Queensland and New South Wales, but also the southwest corner may also see a few showers in Western Australia. The weekend doesn't hold a lot of dramatic weather. High pressure parked south of Western Australia, ballooning right out though to the ACT, New South Wales and the Tasman. Now there's still a little bit of a colder airflow around Tasmania, so a few showers coming into the west coast, and once you get up to about sort of Port Macquarie northwards, those easterly winds are blowing through. So there will be some coastal cloud, a few showers, and those winds are fairly brisk around Queensland, Northern Territory, and a large part of Western Australia. Those easterly winds, I'm not sure if I just said westerlies, easterly winds are blowing through across the continent there. By Sunday, we've got a few more showers developing, maybe a bit more thunder activity popping back up into Queensland. But again, most places are pretty settled except for that easterly breeze that is blowing through. It could be, like I say, a little bit windy in exposed areas, but we're not talking about anything damaging, at least nothing on a big scale. We've got some showery weather carrying on in the southeast. Now this is another colder change because of that incoming high. Highs as they move on in, they usually dredge up a southerly and they end with the warmer northerlies. So the colder wind is coming through here. Temperatures will drop around the southeastern corner of South Australia and a large part of Victoria and all of Tasmania, feeling that more wintry change coming through as we go through Sunday. Let's get into next week because that's where there's a little more energy or potentially a lot more energy out to the east. So Monday itself, not overly dramatic, but you start to see these sort of rain and showers pushing further inland to Queensland. And some of those could be thunderstorms that develop during the day, not necessarily just moving off the sea and moving in. Showers further down the New South Wales coastline. And again, there could be some thunder in here because you've got this colder, more wintry change pushing right over Victoria, nudging the ACT, and of course, right over the top of Tasmania. Jump over to the other side, warmer northerly winds blowing ahead of what looks like a fairly weak low pressure system off the coast of the southwest. So by Tuesday, that southwest low drops to the south. It doesn't do a lot. It does drive in a few showers, maybe a few isolated thunderstorms. You can see a line of sort of heavier showers north of Perth. That's worth keeping an eye on, but dry for the rest of Western Australia, dry for the Northern Territory, dry for most of Queensland, although could be a few heavy showers that form. But obviously the low is deepening here on Tuesday. When you compare it with other computer modelling, they're all kind of the same at the moment, showing this low out here. How long it stays and how deep the air pressure gets, that's a little bit harder to lock in this far out. But based on this map, what you're seeing is wintry airflows stuck over Victoria. And you're seeing a very windy southeasterly coming in from Sydney southwards, Sydney down to Victoria, windy southeasterlies blowing up towards Canberra. And then once you get north of Sydney, those winds are more southerly coming into Queensland. So temperatures will be down a wee bit as a result of that. A lot of heavy rain around Lord Howe Island, and there'll be plenty of thunderstorms with this system, maybe most of it out at sea. By Wednesday, this is the part that gets harder to lock in. How close to Australia does that low get? So it could easily drift further to the east. It is expected at some point to drift towards New Zealand. So there's a bit of a wiggle room here where it might move further away and therefore reduce severe weather risks, or it could go closer than what this model is showing. If this is accurate, there are severe weather risks here from basically Port Macquarie all the way down to about Sydney in the sense of severe gales, damaging winds in that scenario, and very heavy rain coming through as well, or fairly heavy rain, 60, 80 millimetres in a day type of setup. So there could be wind and rain warnings by the Bureau of Meteorology next week for New South Wales, maybe the ACT. And then you've got this other system over in Western Australia, the low that's kind of dropping south of you, driving in some heavy rain showers, maybe some thunderstorms. But high pressure is ballooning all the way up to the Northern Territory here by the middle of next week. So by Thursday, the low looks as though it's sort of stretching out as it's being dragged over towards New Zealand. And so you've still got between the high pressure, that's high pressure there over Tasmania, a small area. Between that and the low, you've got these windy southeasterlies continuing, mostly in the coastal zones of New South Wales, blustery kind of weather, not necessarily problematic by the time we get to the Thursday mark of next week. But look, still a lot of dry, calmer weather going on around Australia and stormy stuff down where it should be. Let's have a look at the rainfall now. This is for the next 7 days. Animate it. You can see plenty of southern showers to begin with, and then that low develops out on the Tasman. And this is where you've got the potential of seeing some higher rainfall totals, and really all the way along the coastal part of New South Wales, just to about the Port Macquarie area, you're seeing rainfall totals between 60 and 100 millimetres. So like I say, we'll have to wait for our update on Monday to double check if that is all locked in. But at this stage, it looks as though there is a chance of some heavy rain. Otherwise, some very large, dry areas around Australia, and even not very much coming in for Tasmania. All right, before I go, the place of the day today, Norseman, Western Australia. Small town, 555 people right here. Weather-wise, look at the elevation, 283 metres. As a New Zealander, that surprises me, because New Zealand towns, despite all of our mountains and ranges where I live, most towns are actually quite low level. Australia's got many towns that are higher than every town in New Zealand. That's another one right there, 283 metres. No wonder the temperatures are low at night and not overly hot during the day. Pretty dry week coming up. Thursday next week, that's the next chance of getting a few showers there. Flying the old 787 Dreamliner. That's all from me. Have a great rest of your week. I'll see you again on Monday.